All right, we are live. Let me get this show on the road. Welcome to this presentation, How to Beat Perfectionism and Procrastination in Your Mary Kay Business. I am Sean Smith. In the Mary Kay world, we have a brand, and I am somewhat known as the PinkCaddieCoach. That's me up there in the banner. And I appreciate you being on the line. First of all, I acknowledge you for taking the time out of your evening or morning or day or whatever time it is for you and jumping on this webinar. I want to tell you just briefly my story for those of you that aren't familiar with me. I've been coaching and training and speaking in the Mary Kay world for over 10 years now. And I never had the intention of being a Mary Kay trainer. I never even really had the intention of being a trainer in the business world. I had a big breakthrough experience in 2005, and I just knew that I wanted more from my life, right? And at the time, I knew I liked motivating people. I liked the idea of being a speaker. And so I started to just talk to people. I started to speak locally here. And finally, I said, I want to do a big speaking event. And so I did this event for athletes called How to Maximize Your Athletic Ability. And there were two Mary Kay directors who showed up with their units. And after I couldn't figure out why they were coming to this, how to maximize your athletic ability. But after the event, they came up and said, a lot of the things you talked about really apply to us too. So would you be willing to come speak to us? And I had absolutely zero intention of doing that. I had no interest whatsoever. After a couple of months, though, I went out and I did a 1 hour talk in for a Saturday event, and I fell in love. I fell in love with the energy in the room, with the hunger. What I love about Mary Kay, one of the many things that I love about Mary Kay is you're just hungry for a better life. You're hungry for a better experience on this planet. Otherwise, you wouldn't have joined a business, or you wouldn't have stuck around when things weren't all easy, right? So I really appreciate who you are, and I appreciate hanging out with people that don't just want more out of life, but are willing to take action and get more out of life. And ultimately, that's going to be the deciding factor in success and failure, is whether you take action or not, whether you take enough action. And unfortunately, too many people think themselves out of action. They're afraid of taking action, whether it's booking calls or warm chatting in the Mary Kay world or doing your finances, just personally, or whatever the case is. Most people talk themselves out of taking action. And that's really the recipe for mediocrity, right? Because you can't get out of your current comfort zone without action. You can't move into your dreams and your goals without action. Yet most people are predisposed to talking themselves out of taking action because of their fears. And that's one of the things that I'll talk to you deeper about tonight is you've got to embrace change. You've got to embrace the idea that success is uncomfortable. And I know most of you, I would imagine, maybe even all of you know on some level, some intellectual level, that success is supposed to be uncomfortable. You can't grow without being uncomfortable, but most people don't live that way. Even though they intellectually know it, they're still more committed to staying safe and staying comfortable than they are actually going after their goals. So that's a way for you to sort of check in with yourself to see if you're actually living the path towards success, or are you living the path toward mediocrity and hoping for or expecting success. And the path of mediocrity is basically being more committed to your comfort, or more committed to your convenience, more committed to your emotional safety than you are to achieving and experiencing your goals and dreams. That's my definition of mediocrity. I'll never tell anybody that, only has $5,000 in their bank account, or has a job, or, is a certain body type or body weight. I'll never say that that's the definition of mediocrity. You have your own goals. But if you're not really achieving to the level that you can and that you want to achieve, then that's mediocrity in my opinion. You get to set the standards and the definition of what you actually want to achieve and what success means to you. But as human beings, we all have the ability to succeed at a very high level. but most of us fear ourselves out of that, right? I just used fear as a verb. We fear ourselves out of it because we're more committed to staying safe, and so our fears actually have the bigger control over us, you know. So anyway, that's what I love about Mary Kay, and that's how I got introduced to Mary Kay. And like I said, I've been teaching and training and coaching, doing a lot of private coaching and group coaching programs for the last 10 years in the Mary Kay world. And one of the things that I've studied a lot is sabotage. And specifically tonight on this webinar, we're going to talk about two forms of sabotage. There are many forms, obviously, but two forms that show up a lot in the Mary Kay world are perfectionism and procrastination. So I'm going to break down these two particular sabotage patterns at a deeper level. So we're not going to really talk a lot about like a bunch of different kinds of sabotaging patterns, etc. I'd rather go deep with just a few things than really broad and wide, right? So before we do that, I want to give you a poll. I'm going to show a poll on your screen here, and it should show up now. It might have showed up in a little window, or it might be in your control panel. But I just want to get a quick check. And if you're really 100% honest with yourself, how much confidence do you have in achieving the goals that you have by the end of the seminar year? So by the end of June, what's your level of confidence that you will achieve your goals? Go ahead and just click whichever one of those four choices best fits you. And I'm seeing the results over here on my end. Looks like almost half the people, over half the people have voted now. When we get close to everyone voting, I'll let you know what the final tally is. And this is shaping up to be really interesting. Not super surprising, but very, very interesting. All right, so almost everybody voted. I'm going to close that poll. 10% of you have zero confidence that you'll achieve your goals. So that's pretty good. So only 1 out of 10 of you have absolutely no confidence. Now, for those 10%, obviously that's a problem because you don't have any confidence whatsoever that you're going to get your goals. 39% of you are doubtful that you'll achieve the goals. 53% of you are hopeful that you'll achieve the goals. And the percentages are shifting as I'm talking, as more people are voting. So it might not add up exactly to 100%. But that leaves 0%. Actually, one person just voted. So 3% of you, I think that's one person, has 100% confidence that you'll achieve your goals. So that's really, really telling, because what that means is most of you don't believe that you're going to succeed. And there are many, many reasons. I'm not going to open that one up because there are so many different possibilities and variables there. But if you don't have the belief that you're going to succeed, it's pretty much impossible that you will, because you've got doubt. And anytime there's doubt, there's lack of commitment. And commitment comes before success. Unfortunately, most people only fully commit to something when they know they're going to succeed, and that's literally impossible, right? So we play it safe. And that's how we talk ourselves out of things. That's how we create these sabotaging patterns. That's how we do all the stuff that we do to keep us from really achieving our goals, right? So if you're one of those people that are on the lower end, actually anybody that's not in that 100% category, that means that you've really got to take a look at what's going on below the surface for you, right? Because it's the below the surface stuff that's ultimately going to decide your success. So let me kind of set the stage here for a minute or two about the webinar. We're going to go for, I don't know how long we're going to go, and I'm going to teach you everything that I can in this time frame about sabotaging patterns in general and specifically perfectionism and procrastination. It says that we'll go for about 45 or 50 minutes. If I end less than 50 minutes, it'll be the first time in the history of my life, but who knows? I'll leave it open for possibility still. And what I don't want is I don't want you to just be intellectually engaged. I don't want you to be writing down the information that you hear me say or the words that you see on the screen only. I want you to take notes of your inspired thoughts mostly, right? It's okay to take down some of the words, that's fine. But I really want you to pay attention to your inspirational triggers, to the things that get you emotional, to the things that get you excited, because that's what I want you to take action on. It's those inspired thoughts that you have that's really going to change the game for you. We'll talk about how to go deeper at the end. If you're a Facebook kind of person, you want to share some of your ahas or realizations, that would be fantastic. You can do it on facebook.com/PinkCaddieCoach, and you can use the tag Ignite My Breakthrough. So let's get into sabotage in a general sense, because you have to understand how it's created generally in order to get a handle on it. You can't control anything that you don't understand, right? But let's first talk about why sabotage is important in general. And I already kind of jumped ahead and started talking a little bit about that. But in life and in Mary Kay, obviously, you're going to have to take action over and over and over and over again. And if you're not taking action because of your sabotage, then you're going to consistently hold yourself back. And if you do that, you'll basically just be fighting against your habits for the rest of your life. And the more that you fight against your habits, the more exhausted you're going to get. And eventually you're either going to quit or you're going to severely underachieve, because you just can't constantly fight against your habits. You can't constantly think that your willpower is going to outweigh your fears and your internal conflicts. It's just not going to happen. Your willpower doesn't last that long, right? And many of you have that experience where you get all excited after going to a seminar, or after reading a book, or after talking to somebody or what have you, and that excitement doesn't last very long, right? So I don't want you to live that route where you're just getting exhausted and really fighting upstream, basically. I want you to be willing to make the shifts internally that you have to make. And when you do that, there are absolutely fantastic results available for you. This is an inside out process, but I want you to know that we're not just talking about, only raising your self-esteem or only raising your confidence. When you create better patterns, when you remove some of the sabotage, then you can create fantastic results in your Mary Kay business, right? Antonella said that when she got rid of perfectionism, her income tripled. I mean, what would that be like if your income tripled, if you just got out of your own way, you know? Cody said that she got to 80 team members. I don't remember where she started, but it was low because she was making $2,000 a month in production. And then she went up to 28,000. She got into her Cadillac. But what she said that I love the most is she has balance in her life. She feels closer to her husband. She feels closer to her children. And so there are tangible results available, but they won't stick, and they'll be incredibly difficult unless you make the internal shifts. Okay. So let's talk at a high level how sabotage is created. The basic principle of human behavior that sabotage operates from is that we resist what we don't enjoy. If you don't like something, you're going to resist it. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory and elementary. I think all of you understand that. But you got to have that as the context inside of your sabotage if you're going to shift it. And then what happens is anytime that there's a possible negative experience, you will resist. I mean, that's just the case with pretty much anything, animals and toddlers and adults as well. So whenever you might come up against a conflict, an internal conflict, you might have pain or embarrassment, or you might feel discouraged or anything like that, you're just going to resist. So those are the foundational principles going on around sabotage. But specifically, what I want you to understand about sabotage is why it's created. Your sabotaging behaviors are created for a reason. They're created for a purpose, right? And let me tell you a story about this because I think it'll really set the context. So there's a story about a golden Buddha in Thailand. And some of you might have heard this story. Maybe you've heard me tell the story. I told it on one of the videos recently that I put out. They found this golden Buddha in Thailand. But they didn't, when they found it, it wasn't golden. It was this big, giant, like 10-foot Buddha that was all clay. And so they just figured it was a big clay Buddha. But as they were moving it, some of the clay chipped away and they saw gold from the inside. And as they did research, and then eventually they chipped away all the clay and it was just this big giant golden Buddha. And as they did research, what they figured out is that the golden Buddha belonged to this civilization of monks, and the monks knew that the Burmese army was going to come through their village and probably kill them all, but they didn't want the army to take their golden Buddha because it was a sacred symbol for them. And so what they did is they covered it up with clay, thinking and hoping that they would just leave it there. And that's exactly what happened. They came in, they killed all the monks, the army did, and they left the clay Buddha until it was eventually discovered and moved. And so the monks basically were just trying to protect their golden Buddha by covering it up with all these layers, right? These layers of clay. And what I love about that story is it's a perfect analogy for how we actually create our behavior patterns, right? We all are a golden Buddha, whatever you want to think of that as, your core, your godlike self, your inner child, whatever you want to think of that as, that's our purity, right? But as we go along in life, things happen. We get embarrassed, kids laugh at us, we feel pain, we feel like we're unlovable, all these negative experiences happen. And in order to try to protect ourselves from more of those negative experiences, our unconscious mind creates behavior patterns that basically act like the layers of clay. It's designed to protect us, right? So the monks covered up the Buddha with clay as a solution, right? Now, some people might go, wow, that Buddha sat there and it had all this clay over it. Like the clay was the problem. If it didn't have all this clay all over it, then it would be super valuable, right? But the monks saw the clay as a solution. The problem was the army was going to come in and possibly take the Buddha, so they might lose their Buddha. So the clay was put on as a solution. That's how our sabotage is created. It's created as a solution to a deeper problem, right? Whenever you think your golden Buddha is at risk, whenever your unconscious mind believes that your well-being, your emotional happiness is at risk, it'll put on layers of clay to try to protect you. And that's really our sabotaging patterns. All the things that we do that relate to this conversation around, building a business and self-motivation and all that stuff, that's really our sabotage. But what you got to understand is that the sabotage is created as a perceived solution to the bigger problem being pain or embarrassment or what have you, right? And because your unconscious mind created the solution to avoid the problem, your unconscious mind is not going to just simply undo the solution because it created it on purpose. It created it intentionally. So what a lot of you are doing is you're telling yourself to stop being a perfectionist, or you're telling yourself to stop being afraid of warm chatting, or you're telling yourself to just get disciplined, right? You're telling yourself to simply stop procrastinating. But just telling yourself to stop doing something, even if you take classes or you study how to stop doing those patterns, just by telling yourself to do it isn't fixing the problem, right? The problem is some deeper conflict. And it's usually your own limiting belief about not being good enough, not being lovable, not ever being able to succeed or whatever. So, and I'm going to dive deeper into this with these two patterns, perfectionism and procrastination, but all sabotage is protection from some negative outcome. Now, that's a complete shift from the way most people think of sabotage. Most people think of our sabotaging patterns as the problem. I want you to know they're not the problem. They're actually the solution. Even though they create negativity in your life, they were created as a solution. And so the choice you have to make is, are you simply going to wrestle with the quote unquote problems, but they're actually solutions? Are you going to wrestle with the patterns, or are you going to go after the actual issue itself, right? So many of you have seen this iceberg image. The iceberg above the water is like our behavior patterns. That's the sabotage, that's the perfectionism, that's the time management issue, that's the disorganization. Those are all the patterns, right? But I want you to understand those are actually, according to your unconscious mind, those are solutions, right? They're covering up the actual problems. The problems are below the surface. So you have to understand this fundamental shift in sabotage in order for you to control it. And once you understand this, then it'll be easier for you to not get so emotionally involved in your sabotaging patterns, which means it'll be easier for you to actually let them go. If you understand what their purpose is and how they were actually created, right? So let me know if this is making sense. Just type in your control panel there. If this is making sense, just type in, I got it, right? Because once you have this fundamental shift, then it'll be easier for us to roll up our sleeves and actually do something about it, okay? Cool. All right. I see a bunch of you saying, I got it, I got it, I got it, I got it. So for you, the question you have to answer is, what would you rather do? Would you rather continue wrestling with the problems? I'm sorry, with the behaviors, or are you willing to do the work to actually get rid of the problems? Because when you get rid of the problems, then you don't need the behavior, right? So it's better to get rid of the need for the problem. I'm interchanging problem and behavior, and I apologize. It's better to get rid of the need, and then the pattern, the behavior can go away on its own. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you don't have to put any effort into it, but it's like you're removing the issue at the root instead of just continuing to prune the weeds above the surface, right? You got to uproot the weeds. So that's the fundamental choice that you have, is what are you more willing to do? Just keep wrestling, or actually go after the solution, right? And as I was saying earlier, most people that continue wrestling are really struggling, and they live in a lot of irritation, and it's because they're trying to avoid things short term. When you try to avoid your pain, this is what I was talking about, how most people are more committed to convenience and comfort and safety. When you try to avoid your pain in the short term, you actually create long-term misery. But if you're willing to do the work and to put in the effort short term, you'll create long-term freedom. And most people are not willing to do that thing on the bottom. Most people are not actually willing to go after long-term freedom. Of course, everybody will say they are, but most people are not, if we judge their willingness by the actions that they actually take, right? So you've got to be willing to be in it for the long term. And what I've found is when you're willing to be in it for the long term, it actually happens a lot faster. But when you're just trying to get rid of all your issues, immediately, then it either doesn't happen at all, or it takes a lot longer than it could have, right? So that's just some high level discussion around sabotage. And hopefully it's helping you shift what sabotage actually means to you and how it's created. Now we're going to get into these two specific patterns, perfectionism and procrastination. Before I get into perfectionism, I'm going to launch another poll on perfectionism. So I'd love for you to let me know how much perfectionism affects your business, if you really resonate with perfectionism, just to get a sense of how this is affecting you specifically. I'm watching the numbers go up here. More than half of you voted. We'll give it about another 30 seconds so everybody has a chance to vote. And this, again, this kind of interesting, not super surprising, but interesting. Actually, there is one thing that's surprising. So I've done this session twice, and so far there hasn't been anybody that answered not at all, which made sense because, why would somebody who's not affected by perfectionism show up to the webinar called How to Beat Perfectionism? But maybe you're really here for the procrastination. It looks like there are two people that said not at all, which is cool. I appreciate that. So a fourth of you say it affects you tremendously. Almost half of you say it affects you quite a bit. About a third of you, a little bit less than a fourth of you actually, say somewhat, and then you've got a couple of you that say not at all. So almost all of you are affected at least a little bit by perfectionism. So I want you to take what I'm going to talk about with perfectionism and obviously just really see it through your filter and how does it apply in your life, right? This right here, this concept, I think, is the biggest game changer, especially when it comes to perfectionism specifically, but it'll change the entire game when it comes to sabotage, when it comes to Mary Kay. And it's the fact that most of us have this unhealthy connection between who we are as a person and our performance. Who you are is different than what you do and what you accomplish. But when you have an unhealthy relationship between your person, who you are, and and your performance, what you do, perfectionism is generally going to get created because your self-worth is now determined by your success. And so what that means is when you're accomplishing a lot, you feel better about yourself. When you're not accomplishing a lot, you feel bad about yourself. Now, for the most part, of course, we're going to feel better when our results are better. But the difference is when your success is tied to your self-worth as a human being, that's the big problem. And unfortunately, most people's success is actually tied to their self-worth as a human being, right? And so what that creates is a perceived pain of failure. And what I mean by that is if you are a perfectionist and you have this unhealthy relationship between person and performance, then you think that your pain is actually created by your poor results. You think that when you fail, you feel bad. And as long as you think that when you fail, you feel bad, then you're going to think that that's the target, that you just have to do better. But that's actually not the case. The real pain is not in the failure itself. The real pain is in your own self-persecution and punishment. If you ask somebody for their phone number and they don't give it to you, or they give you a wrong number, or somebody says they're coming to your meeting and they don't show up, or somebody joins your business and they quit and ask for the refund, if any of those negative experiences happen to you, it's not the experience, it's not their choice itself that causes you pain. It's what you say to yourself that causes you pain. It's when you say, oh, that just means that I'll never win, or see, I'm not a good leader after all, or so and so was right, I shouldn't have done this thing, or you're stupid, you should be further than you are right now, this is a joke, this is embarrassing, I'll never succeed. It's all those things that you say to yourself, the internal punishment, that actually causes the pain. And you might feel like that's just kind of splitting hairs, but I'll explain why that is so incredibly important. But I actually looked up the definition of persecution, and I saw that it says harassing or oppressive treatment. And that's how most of you talk to yourself. Now, I would usually put myself in the same boat when I'm doing talks like this, but in this case, this is something that I worked on a while ago for a long time, and I rarely do this to myself anymore. I just don't beat myself up anymore, hardly at all. And it's amazing the level of freedom that I have, right? But most of you are in the boat that I used to be in, and you're brutal with yourself. In fact, you are abusive towards yourself. And if you saw somebody talking to somebody else the way you talk to yourself, you would probably put an end to it. You would probably tell them that's ridiculous, don't do that, don't say that, that person doesn't deserve that. And yet, you're abusing yourself internally almost constantly. And when you're abusing yourself, all you're doing is making perfectionism so much harder to break. Because you're telling yourself basically some form of, you're a loser. That's, however you actually language it, it's some form of that basically, right? You're a loser, you'll never succeed. You didn't say the right things. If you were smarter, whatever. And so while you're persecuting yourself like that and abusing yourself, the only way out of that pain to your conscious mind, so you think, is you have to do better, right? So the perceived solution is more success. In other words, if I get everybody to give me their name and number when I'm warm chatting, or I get everybody to come to the event, or I get everybody to say yes to the business, well, then I'll feel good. That's the way to avoid the persecution. But the reality is, first of all, that's completely impossible. So there's no way that you can get everybody to say yes. Most people are going to say no to anything you ask them in Mary Kay. Most people are going to say no to you in your Mary Kay business. That's human nature, right? So it's completely unrealistic to think that the way to get around perfectionism is to do better, right? Because you can only achieve at a certain level anyway. The real way to get rid of perfectionism is unconditional self-worth, where your self-esteem and your value as a person is not conditional upon your results, especially your results in Mary Kay. I mean, think about how asinine this is. Most consultants and directors, even if it's not conscious, at an unconscious level, most consultants and directors, self-esteem goes down when people say no to them, and their self-esteem goes up when people say yes to them. So here you are offering people skincare products, cosmetics, a way to join a business, and your value as a human being is going to be determined by what their perspective is, what their perception, judgment, opinion is. That's crazy. But as long as it's that you have that pattern, that connection, you can never win. Even if you win, you lose. Because even if you just threaten yourself, beat yourself up, even if you do the things that make you successful, you're still going to lose because you won't be happy. You'll never be happy when your self-esteem is at stake inside your accomplishments. You can never be happy because your accomplishments are going to fade. As soon as you do one thing, the newness of that accomplishment will fade, and then you have to do another thing in order to keep yourself feeling good. Let me know if any of you have experienced that, where you've actually succeeded in Mary Kay. You got into a Cadillac, became a director or something like that, but you weren't fulfilled. It didn't make you as happy as you thought it was going to make you. Some of you, it might have actually created more internal conflict, more negative feelings because it wasn't fulfilling, right? It just wasn't holistic success. And so that's why I say it's a lose-lose situation when your self-esteem is conditional upon your achievement. So the way around perfectionism, even though this might not seem like it's the actual solution, the way around it is to be gentle with yourself. It's to be actually encouraging and inspiring to yourself, loving with yourself even. And I want to tie these two together, make sure you get it. If you no longer put your self-esteem on the chopping block when somebody says no to your business, then even if somebody says no, or even if you don't achieve the goals that most of you don't believe you're going to achieve anyway before the end of the seminar year, even if you don't achieve those goals, your self-esteem is intact. Your golden Buddha has nothing to be afraid of, so you don't need the clay. You don't need the protection. You don't need to create this perfectionism. You don't need to create all the pressure and stress that you might have because you're not going to beat yourself up. Your self-esteem is whole and complete regardless of what the computer printout says about who's on your team and how many are terminated and how many are not, and what your production numbers are. As soon as you separate who you are as a person and your value from your performance, performing becomes infinitely easier. I'll say that again. As soon as you separate yourself, your self-esteem from your performance, performing becomes infinitely easier. So you'll actually achieve a lot more when your achievement doesn't determine your self-worth. Not only will you achieve more, you'll achieve it faster and it'll be easier to do. So you tell me which road you'd rather be on. The road that's difficult and painful and lasts longer. It takes longer to get there, and once you get there, it doesn't even last as long. Or the road that's actually easier, lasts longer, and you can achieve more, right? So even though that might not seem like that's the solution, that's the actual solution if you understand what's happening at the unconscious level. Now, the other thing I want to say about perfectionism is there's actually ambition inside of perfectionism. I don't want you to let go of your high standards for yourself. I just want you to let go of the negative emotional attachment to your self-esteem that those high standards have. And one of the ways you can do it is simply changing the language, because nobody that I've ever met has a negative connotation to the word excellence, but almost everybody has a negative connotation to the word perfection. So don't even use the word perfection or perfect or perfectionism anymore. Just replace it with excellence, because then you can hold on to your high level of expectation of yourself and your ambition without the negative connotation, without that unhealthy relationship to your self-esteem. So I want you to change your language around perfectionism. So now let's get into procrastination. But once again, I just want to check in with you guys. I'm going to launch a poll here. Want to check in with you, and let's see how procrastination, how much does that affect you in your business? So go ahead and choose one of those four options: tremendously, quite a bit, somewhat, or not at all. Procrastination obviously being putting things off till the last minute, or putting certain things off until other things are accomplished, or what have you. All right, most of you have answered the poll, and I appreciate you for engaging like that. And almost 2/3 of you say tremendously, and the rest of you might still be waiting to take the poll because you're procrastinating. That was a joke. I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate that I can't get your feedback. Maybe I'm just going to pretend that you guys really liked that joke. Somebody says 100% procrastination. Thank you, Akila, if that's the way to pronounce your name. Thank you for laughing out loud in the question section. So 2/3 of you say tremendously, and almost 1/3 of you say quite a bit. And then there was a couple of people that said somewhat, and 0% said not at all. And again, that's not surprising since we're talking about perfectionism and procrastination here. So let's break down procrastination. A lot of it is similar to perfectionism in terms of the way it's created and so forth, but specifically with procrastination, I've noticed three most common reasons that people procrastinate. And the first one I've already alluded to. It's basically the the whole reason that we sabotage in general, and it's I don't want to, right? I just don't want to do it. And the bottom line is we'll always do what we want to do before we do what we need to do or what we think we should do or what somebody else tells us to do. We're always going to rather do what we want to do. So the way to shift your procrastination, knowing that we always seek pleasurable experiences, is actually find the fun in your experiences. Many of you don't like warm chatting. And if you don't like warm chatting, you will always procrastinate because you don't like it. But as soon as you can shift the way you relate to the idea of warm chatting, maybe it's, you realize that this is a service. Maybe you're offering people an opportunity to change their life. Maybe you have an obligation to share something that you know is really powerful, and you at least ask the question and they get to choose. When you have some kind of shift like that, and then you can focus on how fun it is to connect with people, to meet new people, gain a friend, possibly, what have you. When you think in those terms, then you'll have a lot less resistance towards warm chatting because you'll actually be looking at it differently. You'll be looking at it in a way that you actually enjoy it, right? And I've never met anybody who can't shift their energy around warm chatting or anything else they are resisting in their business. We all have something that we can attach to these tasks. I mean, you chose Mary Kay for a reason, so there was something in there that you really want to create, right? And we have to just make sure that we transfer that desire to as many, if not all, of the tasks inside of Mary Kay, so that you won't fundamentally resist it because you actually enjoy it, right? So that's the first one. And the way to shift out of that is to find the fun and the enjoyment in the tasks itself. Sometimes you can't find it on your own because the mind can't solve a problem that it created, right? Usually with the same level of awareness and thinking. So sometimes you can't see it on your own. You have to get other people's perspectives, to ask questions, to pull things out of you, or to hear what you're saying that you're not aware that you're saying, etc. Common reason number 2 for procrastination is actually confidence. This might be weird, but when you do something that's a little more difficult, a lot of times you actually feel better about yourself. And the more that you make things difficult for yourself, the more confidence you have that you can pull it all together, in the final hour, right? I always tell the story that when I was in college, I would quite often have a term paper or some kind of essay due, at a like 2 p.m. on a Wednesday or whatever the day is, doesn't matter. But I would generally wait until earlier that day to start the essay, right? Maybe late the night before. And I would usually work all the way through the night, pull an all-nighter, barely get the paper printed, take it into the professor, and then just walk out of class because I was so tired I couldn't even stay in class. I would just turn the paper in and leave. And every time I would do that and get an A, I felt better about myself. And then every time I got a new assignment, I would think, oh, I got this. I'll just do it later. Right. So a lot of times we are actually stroking our ego when we pull things off at the last minute, but that makes the pattern more entrenched, obviously. Right. Now, when you actually feel better about yourself from a self-esteem perspective, that's when this becomes a real dangerous pattern. So the solution to this is similar to what I already said before. Detach your self-esteem from your achievements, because then when you achieve up against the gun, last minute, it's always going to feel good when you achieve, but it won't give you a sense of an increase of self-worth or self-esteem. That's where it becomes unhealthy, right? And then you can just make choices. And I've just decided to stop beating myself up about being a procrastinator. I know that I will generally wait till the last minute. That's just what I like to do, actually. And there's adrenaline inside that pressure too. And the unconscious mind loves adrenaline. So I just know that I'm usually going to wait till the final hour. I just don't beat myself up over it anymore. Sometimes I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's cute. But because I don't have the unconscious, unhealthy connection anymore, it's easier for me to actually shift the pattern. I just make better choices. I don't have that emotional charge on it that makes it difficult to change your pattern, right? So that's common reason number 2. Common reason number 3 is, I would say, probably the most common. It's self-image protection, and it goes back to that golden Buddha story idea. We all have adequacy beliefs, in my experience. Adequacy meaning, we all doubt whether we're good enough, whether we're lovable enough, whether we're going to succeed, whether we are just simply enough, pretty enough, smart enough, whatever it is. Most of us have I'm not enough kind of beliefs. And when you have a belief called I'm not enough, it's painful. And even though the belief itself is painful, what's the most scary to you is confirming that belief. You're most afraid of actually confirming that you're not good enough. So one of the ways that the unconscious mind tries to avoid confirming that you're not good enough is it creates excuses. Because then it has a story. You have an out, basically. So if you try to achieve a certain goal and you don't get it and you waited to the last minute, then at least the unconscious mind can say, yeah, but we waited to the last minute. And if we wouldn't have waited till the last minute, we probably could have got it done. I mean, most of you, I would imagine, can recognize that thought pattern with something in your life where you didn't create what you wanted to create. And you said, yeah, but if I could have done better if I would have just worked earlier, worked harder, more disciplined, more focused, or if I would have started earlier. And inside that justification is basically an excuse, but you're retaining hope. You're retaining the idea that you still might be good enough. Because the worst thing that most of us can imagine is actually setting ourselves up to succeed completely, not sabotaging ourselves at all, not stacking the deck against us. We completely stack the deck in our favor. We put everything we have into something and still fail. Because if you put everything you have into something and still fail, then that means you're just simply not good enough to make that work. And we're so afraid of that confirmation that we would rather have excuses. And that's why we procrastinate a lot of times. That's why we have perfectionism. That's why we have all these other sabotaging patterns. And another thing about sabotage is usually we create sabotaging patterns that give us some benefit, right? Like eating candy and watching TV is actually enjoyable. So we'd rather do the enjoyable activity rather than making phone calls, especially if there's a chance that, nobody answers or nobody says yes. And our sabotaging patterns also often give us some sense of accomplishment. Like, the time that you just spent doing the laundry or cleaning the house or, re-alphabetizing the inventory, there's a measurable sense of accomplishment there. And so then it gives you a little bit of a benefit, right? On top of protecting your self-image. So there's several things at play here. Ultimately, the solution is the same. Unconditional love of self so that your self-image isn't up for grabs based on your performance. So hopefully you can see that, these solutions they're the same, basically, slight variations in the way that we dissect it, but the solutions are the same. And ultimately, what I've learned in my journey is that your success, especially in the personal development world and in your Mary Kay business, your success matters, or depends rather, almost entirely on what you say to yourself. As soon as you start being more gentle to yourself, most of your sabotage will go away. When most of your sabotage goes away, you won't have the fear of talking to people and doing the activities in your business that are required for it to grow. And when you don't have those fears and you actually do more of the activities, guess what happens? Your business grows. So if we really trace it all back, it really comes down to what you say to yourself. And that's exciting. Hopefully that's exciting for you, right? It might be alarming for some of you, but hopefully that's exciting because it's a very clear target. So instead of you having to work on perfectionism and procrastination and disorganization and time management and fear of failure and all these other things that become overwhelming and your focus is scattered, instead of having to work on all those things, just work on your relationship with yourself. Because then the need for all of those other things will either go away entirely or it will be reduced greatly. And then it'll be so much easier for you to make the behavior shifts, right? So that's what I've learned that about the truth about sabotage. Still, a lot of people won't choose to go that road because it's not easy, right? And this journey in Mary Kay, the journey in self-development, it is not going to be easy, but it will be worth it. If you're willing to put in the time, it will be worth it. And it goes back to the question I asked a little while ago, what are you more committed to? Are you more committed to avoiding pain and wrestling with the symptoms, or are you more committed to putting in the effort and actually doing the work? If you're more committed to doing the work, just type in the question box, I am. Just simple, I am. If you're more committed to doing the work, then you are avoiding the short-term pain, right? And I got to tell you, your answer to that question determines your success or failure. Not just your linguistic answer, right? You actually have to back it up. But your answer determines whether you are going to succeed or fail. It's really truly that simple. Cami says, I am and scared. Good. You should be scared because fear is the border patrol of your comfort zone, and all of your goals are beyond the walls of your comfort zone. So as you go toward your goals, as you move more toward evolution of yourself and become more of who you are, you will trigger your fears. See, most people are so afraid of their fears that they do everything they possibly can to avoid their fears. That's why I said earlier, most people are doing short-term avoidance. Well, if you try to avoid your fears, then you're avoiding your growth at the same time, because that's the only way to grow, is to stretch yourself. So I'm happy that you feel a little scared. That's confirmation that you're going in the right direction, right? Cool. Barbara says, a lot of time and effort spent in avoidance. I'm scared, but I'm facing it. That's the key. You don't have to get rid of your fears. You just have to be willing to embrace your fears and dance with your fears. And you've got to be willing to use your fears. That's the way to really succeed in life, and specifically in your Mary Kay business, right? You just got to be willing. It's about your relationship to fear, not whether you actually have fear or not, but what's your relationship to the fears. That's the key piece. Okay. So at the end of your life, this is something that I've learned in my journey. At the end of your life, what's really going to matter is not whether you actually achieved any of those tangible goals. What you're really only going to care about from a deep personal perspective is just, did you try? Did you go for it? Did you swing the bat? Did you take the shot? Whatever analogy you want to use, did you go for it? That's really what matters. And if you can look back on your life and say you went for it with everything you had, then you will feel good about the way you spent your time on this planet. And if you can't look back and say, I gave it all I got, then you will have regrets. And I just realized when I was young, I was hit by a car when I was 13 years old and should have died by the details of the accident. I realized at that time that life is fragile and I only have one chance. And if I only have one chance, I need to do everything that I possibly can to live the life I want to live. Otherwise, I will look back on my life with regret. And it was such a blessing for me as a 13-year-old child to have that awareness. And I've really lived in fear ever since that moment. And my fear is regret. I've lived and operated by the fear of regret ever since then. And the fear of regret is a positive fear because it causes us to keep taking risks and keep striving and keep evolving, because I'm afraid of looking back at my life and saying, what if I would have tried harder? I'm afraid of that conversation. And the fear of that conversation is 1,000 times bigger than the fear of somebody telling me no. It's 1,000 times bigger than the fear of failure. The fear of regret outweighs all of those other fears that we make up. It's just that most of us are not conscious. We're not aware of the fear of regret. We're not driven by it. I want you to be driven. I want you to become aware of that fear, and I want you to be driven by the fear of regret, because it'll outweigh all of those other fears, all those other sabotaging patterns that have held you back up until now. That's my wish for you, because it's been a complete life-changing concept and choice for me. So ultimately, you've got a couple choices, and this is in life in general. You've got the coping route or you've got the clearing route, right? You can keep wrestling with the problems. You can keep trying to avoid your pain. You can keep trying to avoid the things that most people are trying to avoid, the failure, people lying to you, judgment, all that stuff. You can keep trying to avoid all of those experiences and cope in life. You can keep trying to be the first person in human history to be successful without experiencing deep failure. I don't suggest you try to be the first person, because there's a reason nobody's done it before, because it's not possible. Or you can do what it takes to really ignite your own personal breakthrough from the inside out by clearing the problems, by creating the new patterns, by creating the new identities, by creating new beliefs, by letting go some of the things you need to let go of, by unbelieving some of the beliefs that are currently holding you back. And my invitation to you is that you choose wisely, because you have one shot on this planet. That's it. So choose wisely. And the people that are choosing the coping route are just simply more committed to their convenience and more committed to their comfort. You guys, success is not convenient. Success is inconvenient. You have to be willing to do things at inconvenient hours, at inconvenient times, with inconvenient energy. When you don't feel like doing it, you have to be willing to be inconvenienced for your freedom. It's the people that think there's such a thing called convenient success or actionless success or painless success or fail-less success. Those people live in mediocrity. And I'm not saying that as a value judgment. I'm not like trying to be demeaning toward them or any one of you if this is rattling your cage and ruffling your feathers. But that's the reality. You cannot achieve your dreams and stay convenient and comfortable at the same time. Now, if that's your choice, that's totally cool. I will absolutely 100% support your choice to just be more committed to comfort, and you just want to enjoy life more and you don't want to deal with the pain and the failure and all that kind of stuff. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that either. The problem is when people act one way and expect the outcome from the other way. If you're more committed to growth, more committed to seeing what you're made of, more committed to seeing what's inside your heart, more committed to seeing what kind of legacy you can leave for your family and for people that you don't know, people that are looking up to you, if that's what you're more committed to, then act like it and behave like it. You've got to be willing to take risks. You've got to be willing to take action. You've got to be willing to do the things that most people are not willing to do, because you understand that it's required, and you're more fearful of regret than you are of failure. I've never put those two against each other until right now in this moment. What are you more afraid of, regret or failure? That's really what it comes down to. It's a very simple question. Now, for those of you that are willing to do that work that I'm talking about, I can help you. I've got a program coming up, and it's actually called Ignite Your Breakthrough. That's the program. So this is a Mary Kay only group coaching program that's launching in a little bit of time here. We actually start on March 21st. It's a group coaching program. It's the first time I've done a Mary Kay only program in more than a year and a half. So I'm excited to get back into just the Mary Kay only space. And we'll be talking about some things that I haven't talked about, at least as deep as I've talked, as I understand them now. So there's new information in this program as well. And for those of you that are interested, I know some of you know that you just need to get into the program, so you can go to that website right there and jump on in. But let me tell you a little bit more about the program. The intention of the program is to really change your internal belief structure so that you have permission to succeed. Not that you have the ability to succeed. Everybody has the ability to succeed, but you need to have permission to succeed. I want to read this comment that I just saw. Cami says, "Thank you for this training. You've summed up with surgical precision exactly what is holding me back. Even some of your examples were like you had a camera in my home. Now I have identified it. It's time to do something about it." Thank you for that, Cami. Thank you for your vulnerability in sharing that. That's a very, very powerful statement. And I concur. Do something about it, because if all you get is awareness, but you don't do anything about it, then what's the point, right? So what I'm going to teach you how to do is really shift from the inside out. So you're changing your belief structure, specifically around money and around success, and so that you can create some of those habits that are going to lead you to be a lot more productive, and it's going to be sustainable success, and ultimately it's going to be all about implementation, implementation, and implementation, right? I want to also go deeper in your relationship to yourself and your business, shifting some of the energy so that you can start attracting instead of chasing. We're also going to get into some of the tangible mechanical business building stuff like duplication and sales and recruiting and all those things that you actually need to grow your business. This isn't going to be just a course on raising your self-esteem, right? We're going to go after all levels of success, the inner game as well as the external skill set game, right? Because ultimately you have huge goals in Mary Kay, and I want to help you achieve those goals so that you can have the freedom that you want, whatever that means to you, and live life on your terms, right? So the structure of the program, it's a 12-week program. I think it's actually 13 calls, and it's going to go all the way up through the end of June, because I know you all have seminar goals, at the end of the seminar year, and I want to do what I can to support you all the way up through the end of the seminar year. And we're going to go deeper into money beliefs than I've done before. We're going to go deeper into productivity habits. I've been learning a lot recently about, ways to maximize your own productivity. You're going to get handouts so that you can engage a lot more. You're going to have live Q&A sessions with me, both after every call, as well as every third call is going to be nothing but laser coaching sessions. And laser coaching sessions are where basically I take time out of teaching more content and I just check in with you. What content isn't making sense? What holes are showing up that need to be filled in? What dots are not being connected? What situations are happening in your life and your business that I can help support you with right now? And so these are laser coaching calls every third call, so I can make sure that you're engaging with and implementing the content and the concepts, right? What I found is when we take every third call and do these laser coaching sessions, it makes the engagement, it makes the information, the content stick so much more, right? So it's very, very powerful calls. You're going to get a lot of breakthroughs on those calls, even if they're not your questions that I'm answering, right? You're also going to have private Facebook groups so you can have support online. You're going to have all the archives so that you can listen to the calls over again, or if you miss any of the live sessions, you can just listen to the recording. And we stagger the calls, meaning they're not all on the same day. We do calls on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So if you have a unit meeting on one of those nights, you're not going to constantly have a conflict, right? So, chances are you're going to be able to join live most of the calls, right? Some of the curriculum that we're going to go through, we're going to get into the inner game, the proper mindset of success. You have to have the foundational mindset, because if you don't, then it doesn't matter what I teach you from a skill set perspective. It's just basically going to go away. I love this comment. CJ said, all that you've said has reopened my eyes to get off my butt. I love it. Patricia says, for so long I thought I was damaged beyond repair and that I could never change. Tonight I finally breathed. Thank you so much. That's awesome, Patricia. Thank you. I finally breathed. That's a really cool comment. Ouch to the ouch, says Darlene. Oh boy. Okay. Let me go back to the curriculum here. I was just caught by by some of the comments there. So the curriculum, the proper mindset of success. We'll also talk about breakthroughs. One of the issues in personal development is that a lot of people are actually in the middle of a big breakthrough, but they judge it or they don't know how to recognize it, and so they talk themselves out of it or sabotage themselves out of it when they're actually on the right path. So I want to teach you how to not only recognize your breakthrough, but how to trigger those breakthroughs so that you can keep going and obviously have a lot more success. We're going to get into increasing your personal productivity, time management stuff, organization stuff, how to amplify your energy. This is going to be one of my favorite topics and hopefully a game changer for a lot of you, because the bottom line is most of you, I would say, in my experience at least, you're actually fighting against your own energy. So you're making it harder on yourself. It's like, you're on one of those incline treadmills and you keep making the treadmill be more and more inclined so that it's actually harder to go. Whether it's physical energy or what you're putting in your body or your exercise or lack of exercise or, regrets that you're carrying around, whatever it is, most of you are carrying around very heavy energy and it's difficult to work against that. So I want to teach you how to clear some of that negative stuff, create better energy so that you're actually supporting your business and your growth with the energy, and ultimately how to do it all with grace and harmony and ease, because that's what it's all about. And then from a skill set perspective, specifically Mary Kay, we're going to talk about influence and persuasion in leadership. We're going to talk about sales and recruiting, how you can be really powerful and authentic at the same time, how to control your fears, how to manage and how to use your fears, how to recognize when you're sabotaging yourself and how to refocus and get yourself back on path. We'll talk about all the things that are related to achievement in Mary Kay, your goal setting, affirmations, accountability, coaching, mentorship, all that stuff that's related to Mary Kay. And finally, whatever it is that you need. That's one of the reasons why we have the laser coaching. I'm going to be highly engaged in the community. You'll be asking me questions on Facebook. I'll be checking in with you guys all the time. And I want to know what it is that you want more of. And so I'm going to put a lot of that stuff in the program as well. So you'll be able to sort of co-create the program too. So this is for you if you're just tired of being where you are, if you want to grow quickly and consistently, if you're irritated, that's good. If you're irritated and you've got more inside, then this is going to be great for you, because again, this is about igniting your breakthrough from inside out. You got to be willing to take action though. And if you're interested in learning from other people's mistakes, and the bottom line is you have to be hungry for your breakthrough. So there are bonuses with this program. Let me tell you about the bonuses before I tell you about the investment. There are 4 bonuses with this program. The first bonus is 2 months in our monthly Eagles Club group coaching program, which is like a positive motivation every single month. But we're going to start it after Ignite Your Breakthrough finishes so that you're not bombarded with too much information at once. You're also going to get a free 30-minute strategy session. This is really important so that you can take the information and apply it to your specific unique circumstances, right? We have to help you apply it to your life, your unique details, not just general concepts, right? And you're going to get a strategy session with one of my certified coaches that'll help you implement into your personal life. And this will be a huge value to you. This is something I haven't offered. This bonus number 3 is, I am really like boldly committed to private coaching. I believe all of us will succeed more with a private coach than if we just try to get it all out of ourselves, right? And if you end up going down that road with our company, then you'll get $200 toward an investment of a private coaching program later on, if this is something that you ultimately want to do. And that's actually more than the investment of this program. So, it ends up kind of being like a free bonus, this program, if you end up doing coaching. And if coaching is not for you, that's great. But if it is, then you can have $200. If you don't end up doing coaching, but you do want to do some of our products, or you can do them both. This is not an either or, but you also get $50 toward any of our online products. And if you want us to ship it to you so you can put the CDs in your car or what have you, then then there's just a small shipping handling charge based on whichever program you choose. But those are the bonuses that you get. So I want you to really have a lot of value and a lot of support. It's over $500 worth of value. Your investment options are $199 if you pay in full. And if you don't have the $199, you want to do the program and you need a payment plan, we want to make that easy for you as well. So $78 times 3, 30 days apart is the payment plan. And 78 times 3 is a little bit more than 199, so you'll be paying a little bit more because we're basically financing you, just so you know. But if that's the only way that you can get in the program, then we want to give you that option as well. So that's the investment for this mentorship group coaching program that'll take you all the way up through the end of the seminar year. Now, here's the way I want you to think about this. I want you to think about this from the just one thing perspective. Excuse me. What I mean by that is, over the course of 12 weeks, over the course of all the calls, the Facebook community, the laser coaching calls, everything you get out, there'll be probably about, I'd say, between 16 and 20 hours of training, right? With archives and all that stuff. Over the course of all of that time, do you think that you would be able to learn just one thing that would help you sell more products, or help you recruit better prospects, or help you attract better prospects, or help you get more out of yourself, help you achieve one of your goals, help you feel better about yourself, give you more emotional clarity or emotional happiness or fulfillment, or get rid of some of your internal limiting beliefs or negative head talk, the stories that you tell yourself? If it helps you be more gentle, if it helps you drop perfectionism, if it helps you learn something that you pass on to your kids, is there one thing that you might get out of the course of this time that we're going to spend together that ends up allowing you to earn in your business more than $199? And if you believe that you're bound to learn at least one thing that's going to help you earn more than $199, then this is a financial positive return on your investment, right? I mean, why would you not invest $1 if you're going to make $2, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you necessarily need to jump in the program, because maybe you don't like my style, or you're actually not ready to make these changes in your life. And if that's the journey that you're on, that's the journey that you're on. But I want you to see it from a return on investment perspective, because remember, Earlier on, I said that most people are afraid of taking action, and that's the way that you end up in mediocrity. And most people, when there's a proposal for them to make a money investment like this, most people by default, they automatically search for the reason they should say no because they want to hoard that money. They don't want to waste money. They don't want to feel like a failure again. What if it doesn't work? What if it's not guaranteed to work? What if I don't do everything that I could do? What else could I do with that money? Most people automatically say no, and then they search for reasons to justify not taking action. And if this is the pattern that you recognize in yourself, I want you to realize that your automatic response to not take action is crushing your dreams, because you cannot hesitate your way into your dreams. The only way to get your goals and dreams is to take action. So you should be fundamentally attracted to taking action. And yet most people are fundamentally opposed to taking action. That's why most people don't get their goals and dreams, because they are fundamentally opposed. They are automatically opposed to taking action because of their fears. So even if you decide not to join this program, but you realize that that is a mental pattern that you have to shift, then that's fantastic. Maybe that's all you needed to get out of this webinar, and that's great. But if you have that fundamental opposition to action, you cannot win. You can't win in Mary Kay. You can't win in life. You can't be happy. You've got to be fundamentally attracted toward taking action, taking risks, movement, if you're going to achieve your goals and dreams. So I want you to think about all investments with this just one thing perspective, not just this one, but all of your investments with the just one thing perspective. Now, I love giving away fast action taker bonuses. So, for the first 200 people that get in this program, I'm going to give you access to all of the online archives of the 4 Mary Kay only group coaching programs that I've done in the past with similar structures to this one. I've done 4 programs, Change the Game, Whatever It Takes, and then I've done Effortless Leadership for Directors and Finish Strong for Consultants. They all had a slightly different perspective, a different focus. There's some overlap because we're talking about fundamentals of success. So no matter when I do a group coaching program, there's going to be overlap because we're talking about what you need to succeed in Mary Kay. So it'd be a disservice if I don't include, a lot of the fundamentals. But each one of these programs are different from each other. We talk about different things, and you'll get access to all of them. There's over 50 hours if you put them all together of what I just call whenever you need it training. I don't want you to try to go through all the programs all at the same time because that'll be overwhelming, but whenever you need it. There's not a single issue that you could be dealing with in your Mary Kay business or in life that we didn't cover in those 4 programs, or we won't cover in this program of Ignite Your Breakthrough, right? So anything that you need support with, listen, we got you. We've dealt with it. There are archives dealing with that issue. So it really is just like a library of training support that you can have. And then I also like to take a handful of people and have a little bit of fun and do a fast action taker bonus for the first 3. Now, I don't even know if there's any more of these left. Some of you have already said that you jumped in. But for the first 3 action takers on this webinar, from this webinar, the first 3 action takers, you'll get a private call with me, 20-minute call. You'll hear from my office manager, Tanya, and she'll tell you how to set up the call, etc. And I'll just jump on the call whenever we can make it happen, and I'll help you however I can. In 20 minutes, I'll coach you to my best ability and give you clarity or ideas of what to do in your business or whatever I can do to support you in your journey. that's for the first 3 people. And actually, let me do this. Let me see if we already have 3 people, 3 people who've taken action, just so you know if any of those spots are available. And those of you that already did take action, you will know that that this is you. So it looks like we've got one of these spots available still. So the first 2 people that took action here are Cami L and Paula B. Some of you said, I'm going to get in, etc. I can do the payment plan. So there's one more spot available, looks like, for that fast action taker of the first 3 that get a call with me. And if you don't get a call with me, that's fine. I mean, the value is in the program itself, right? And there are those calls with laser coaching, etc. So, I also forgot to tell you, there's a money back guarantee, right? You have 33 days. If you don't think that I've delivered on what I said I was going to deliver, if you don't think that, this program will really help you change your life and make not only just the $200 back, but many, many, many times more than that, then within 33 days of when the program starts, not today, not when you invest, but when the program starts, within 33 days, you can get all your money back if you want. 33 days. That's about a third of the program. You're going to get 4 phone calls, 4 of the 12, or I think there's 13 calls. Actually, I think I added one. You're going to get 4 phone calls as a trial, basically. So there's really no financial risk on your end. And what that means is you'd have the ability to just give it a try. I mean, what if you just gave it a try? If you remove the financial risk and you just give it a try just to see if there are concepts that are really going to change the game for you. What would happen if you just gave it a try and you learned something that helped you, double your sales in one skincare class? That pays for the program itself. So what else is possible? I shared a few of those stories. I want you to see a few more. Judy went from 17 team members to 73 team members, tripled her production from 36 to over 10,000, and really just had a lot of tremendous growth. But what she said was that it was the mindset shift, right? And she said the same mind that created the problem can't solve the problem. I love that one. Diane, once she cleared some of these sabotaging patterns, she said she was getting 1 booking every single day. What would your business look like if you had 1 booking every single day? What if you just had 1 booking every other day? 1 booking every other day, and you were doing classes or facials, right? Now, maybe some of you are already producing more than that. What if you just increased your current production, 20%? What would that look like in your life? So many people are so focused on everything that's wrong that they've forgotten how to look and believe in possibility. If you have forgotten how to believe in the possibility that you can change your life, your dreams are already dead. That was a pretty heavy statement. I kind of had to take that in myself. Jim, many of you know Jim. He went from 39 team members to 200 quickly. He's the king of sales 2 years in a row for Sapphire, and he got back into his Cadillac, and he said it's all the mental shift that changed for him. And Joan went from 5K to 12K. Gigi increased her sales by $3,000, paid off 8 credit cards. 8 credit cards. That is so cool. And for the first time in her career, she had 5 active team members just by clearing a lot of these patterns. And so the significant question, which is what I alluded to earlier, is not what's the cost of taking action. It's what's the cost of not taking action. The cost of not taking action in your life is regret. The cost of taking action is maybe perceived failure or wasting money or wasting time. You throw all of those together, it doesn't weigh enough as much as regret, right? So I'd rather you keep taking action and fail with most of the actions that you take, because you'll get further along than if you're waiting for the right perfect action to take. And chances are, that's not going to take you where you wanted it to go anyway, and then you're stuck. Be an action taker. That's the only way that you can succeed. Be an action taker. All right, so I'm going to look at some of the questions. If you have some questions, you can type it in the question bank here. Somebody says, how long will this offer last for payment? I don't have any specific plans to take the payment plan away. You want to get in before the program starts. It starts on March 21st, but I'm not, I don't believe in any kind of fake scarcity, or, the payment plan only lasts until next Tuesday and then they all expire or whatever. The payment plan is the payment plan. So as long as the program is open, then the payment plan will be there. Paula, woohoo! Yes, I know, because you were one of the fast action takers. Yeah, Cami said she bought in before I started talking. I love it. Julia, I want this. Action taken. Paula, fantastic. All right. Laura says, yes, I am irritated. Great. I want you to stay irritated. That's me. That's me. All right. So if there's, I'm going to stop coping. Awesome. Great comment. Myra says, this is an eye-opener. I'm willing and ready. Patricia, ooh, head hurting and heart pounding. Ooh, if that's not confirmation, Patricia, that your soul is speaking to you, then I don't know what is. Darlene says, I am beyond sick of being stuck. I applaud you. That's that positive irritation that you need to make a change. But you have to take action. Like, you can't think your way out of being stuck. You've got to act your way out of being stuck. Joanne says, can you repeat? Are you more committed to your fears or blank? Are you more committed to your fear or comfort zone, I think is what I said, or convenience, something like that. Are you more committed to your fears or your comfort? But then later on I said, what are you more committed to avoiding, failure or regret? What's a bigger fear? Okay, somebody says, I'm so torn. I need and want to participate in this course. However, when I did the change the game in the past, my job prevented my participation. I felt isolated because I had no interaction with other participants. Now what? Voice in my head is saying, not again. Heart wants the support of a group. So you can live in the support of the group even if you're not on the live calls. I don't know when your job is. These calls are in the evenings, the same time that this webinar was actually, and they're on different nights. So if your job is going to cause you to not be able to be on any of the calls, you can still be in the Facebook group. You can still tap into the community, right? So you don't have to be on the calls live to tap into the community. And you bring up a very valid concern, which is head versus heart. Your head is saying not again. Your heart wants the support. You should always listen to your heart over your head, always. Because your heart is the language from your soul. Your head is the language from your fears, from your programming, from I don't want to get hurt again. Your heart is speaking to you from your dreams, from your little girl inside that says, I want more out of life. That's the voice of your heart. So listen to your heart. And just because you did a program in the past, whether it was my program or anybody else's program, in this case it was one of mine, and it didn't work, that doesn't mean you should stop. We're talking about your goals. We're talking about your dreams. Just because you have failure in your past isn't a good enough reason to stay down when you're knocked down. If you really want to achieve your goals, you have to keep getting up. And I don't care if you've failed 1,000 times. Get up again and try again. Don't let that little voice in your head that's afraid of wasting time or wasting money or failing again, don't let that little voice in your head create regret and mediocrity and cause you at some point in time to look back in your life and go, what if I wouldn't have paid attention to my head? What if I would have only paid attention to my heart that was telling me to please try again? Your head is telling you don't try again. Your heart is saying, please, please try again. My dreams are big enough. Your head is saying, I'm afraid of what if it doesn't work. That little girl inside of you is screaming at you, saying, please try again. Your little girl doesn't need to know that you're going to achieve all of your dreams, but that little girl needs to know that you're willing to try for every last one of them. At the end of your life, that's all you're going to care about. Is did you get up and did you keep trying? Or did you throw in the towel because your head kept saying, well, maybe I don't want to do it. Or maybe it might not work. Or maybe it's too much money. So that's my 100% biased response. And I'm not trying to talk you into my program. I'm not trying to talk any of you into my program. Your $200 is not going to change my life. But this information could change yours if you implement it. Pamela says, please repeat that about the head and the heart. Your head is where your fears live. Your fears keep you from your dreams. Your heart is where your purpose lives. It's where your soul lives. Your soul is what drives you toward your dreams. So if you have one thing, which is your heart, driving you toward your dreams, and you have another thing, which is your head, keeping you away from your dreams, which one should you pay attention to? The problem is the head yells and the heart whispers, and that's why most people are so afraid of what the head is screaming at them. They're so afraid of the fears that they don't listen to the whispers of their soul. And at some point in time, they look back and they realize they've lived a mediocre life, and they get to deal with the regret of having lived more committed to the fears in their head than the dreams in their heart. Don't be one of those people. I don't care if you join my program or not, but don't be one of those people that are more committed to avoiding the fears in your head than you are to chasing the dreams of your heart. Because unchased dreams of the heart become nightmares of the soul. You are obligated to chase every last dream that you have in your heart. And that requires courage, and it requires action, it requires failure, and it requires risk. And it requires you to sometimes tell the little voice in your head to shut up, because your head is more committed to you avoiding pain than it is to you getting your goals. So are you going to avoid short-term pain and live in misery and regret for the rest of your life? Or are you willing, maybe for the first time in your life, to stand up to that little voice in your head that's telling you to be cautious, that's telling you to be careful, that's telling you to stop being childish, that's telling you to stop dreaming? Listen, that's the problem with human behavior, with adult behavior, is that we've forgotten how to dream. We've forgotten how to be childish. We're no longer willing to stand up to the things that get in our way. There was a point in time in your life that you didn't care what got in your way. You were willing to fight it, go around it, go through it, blow it up, do whatever you had to do, because the thing that you were after on the other side of that fear was bigger than the fear. There was a point in time when you wouldn't allow anything to stop you from what you wanted, including your own fears, including your own head talk. There was a point in time when that little girl or that little boy inside of you, that dream that rages inside of you, was so powerful. It was burning so hot that you couldn't even consider, you couldn't even fathom not going for it. And it didn't matter whether you were going to get skinned up knees and you were going to break an arm, or you were going to get ridiculed or you were going to expose yourself to failure or judgment. It didn't matter. None of that stuff mattered because the fire in your soul was so hot that nothing could stand in front of you. There was a point in your life that that's how you lived. And for most of us, that flame has been put out, and that is tragic. When the flame of the human spirit gets put out, that's tragic. You should be willing to guard that flame against any wind. You should be willing to guard that dream against any judgment from anybody. And I don't care if that judgment is coming from the people who gave birth to you, or if it's coming from people that you gave birth to, or if it's coming from people that you said I do to, or if it's coming from anybody else that's looking at you. Because this is your life, it's not their life. You should be the only vote that actually counts. And if somebody tries to tell you what you should do with your life, you got to have the courage, you got to have the boldness, you got to have the self-respect to say, you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't ask you what you think I should do with my life. And the sad thing is, all of those external voices are now swimming inside of your head, and you're listening to them. You're listening to the voices that are telling you to stop. You're listening to the voices that are telling you it's not worth it. You're listening to the voices that are reminding you of the pain that you've experienced in the past. You're listening to the voices that are trying to blow out that flame that rages inside of you. How dare you listen to those voices? And I don't care that those voices are yours. How dare you listen to the voice that's trying to stop you from achieving your purpose on this planet, that's trying to stop you from living in bliss, from living in happiness, from teaching your kids how to go after their dreams. If you're a parent, how dare you teach your children that it's okay to listen to that voice, because you wouldn't let anybody teach your kids that it's okay to not go after their dreams. You wouldn't let anybody teach your kids that. But you are teaching your kids that, if that's how you're acting, because they're not listening to the lecture, they're watching the show. So how dare us listen to that voice inside of us that's telling us to stop, and not listen to the whisper inside of our heart that's crying with tears, crying and screaming, but it's muted. How dare we not listen to that voice that's saying, please, don't you dare think about stopping. Don't you dare think about resting. Shame on us for listening to the loud voices of the head rather than listening to the meaningful messages of our soul. Shame on us for allowing human programming, for allowing our past failures, for allowing the teachers that told us we weren't good enough, for allowing our childhood friends who laughed at us, for allowing our internal voice of persecution. Shame on us for allowing that, any of that and all of that, to get in our way of achieving what God put inside of us. What are you more committed to? What's inside of you, or the voice telling you it's not worth the risk? It's sad when the human spirit has given up. It's sad when the human spirit thinks that their dreams are no longer worth the risk. Are you kidding me? We got one shot on this planet, and it's not worth the risk? Shame on us if we're more committed to our head than we are our heart. Because the conversation that we have with ourselves at the end of our lives, the conversation that I watched my dad have with himself before he died, the conversation that I watched my mom have with herself before she died, was not a conversation with her head or with his head. The conversation that they had, and the conversation that I will have, and the conversation that you will not be with your head. It will not be with those fears. The conversation that we will have will be with our heart. So at the end of our days, if what's really going to matter is what's in our heart, then let's act like it now while we still have a chance to do something about it. That's what I fundamentally believe. And that's what I've learned on this journey. You will never think your way into success. Your intellect is not going to get you anywhere. Your reasoning skills from your head is not going to get you to your goals and dreams. It's that fire raging inside of you that's going to cause you to get up when you fall down. It's that fire raging inside of you that's going to cause you to fight for who you are and what you're made of and what you know to be true deep down in the inner recesses of your soul. It's that raging fire that's going to cause you to push through anything in front of you. That's what's going to get you to your goals and dreams. Your head is the problem. So don't invite it to the discussion about your dreams because it's the problem. I don't have a slide. I didn't have a slide for all of that. But that's really what's going to determine fulfillment in your life. That's really what's going to cause you to be able to look back and say whether you achieved anything or not. You tried. Please, please don't give up your willingness to try. Because then what do you have? So with a deep breath and a little drink of water here, I want to leave you with my wish for you. My wish for you is that you get to witness your own greatness while you're still alive and conscious and have the awareness to do so. My wish for you is that you have this courage and the willingness to jump toward your goals and toward your dreams. And my wish for you is that you don't go to your grave with unspent potential, that you don't hold anything back, because you have one shot. And if you have a choice between living a life of excellence and living a life of mediocrity, my wish for you is that you choose excellence. And if you have the ability to succeed, you have the obligation to succeed. Don't let the pain or the failures from your past dim the light that's inside of you that's meant to shine so bright. That's my wish for you. I appreciate you being on this webinar. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate your energy, which fed into me. And I wish you the best for the rest of this day, the rest of this week, the rest of your life. And if I can support you in any way in doing that, then I would love to. And if not, then I wish you nothing but love and happiness and fulfillment for the rest of your days. Good night. God bless. I'll talk to you all real soon.